I'm here for breaking news here at the Tajiguas Hill fire. My name is Vega with Your News Channel. We're here with Mike Eliason, and he's going to walk us through this fire and give us a little bit more information. So, Mike, what can you tell us about this fire so far?
Well, so far we've burned about half an acre of mulch and some recyclables, and then an acre and a half of vegetation on the downhill side from where we're standing. As you can see over my shoulder, some heavy equipment. This is about where the fire began. It was due to heavy equipment. There was some kind of malfunction or something that happened with the heavy equipment. That's as best as we can tell you right now. The wind.
Can we try and get a closer
we can
look?
keep walking. The wind, as you know, was howling this evening. It was pushing the fire down canyon. So there was somewhat of confusion. It wasn't sure that it was a vegetation fire or if it was a mulch fire. Our first equipment got on scene, realized that it was a large pile of mulch. And when we're talking large piles of mulch, we're talking about 10 feet high, like you would see in rows of an agricultural field. You'd have 10 foot high and then about 3 foot high. Up and down, about 40 rows by about 60 yards each, and there were about 10 rows that were involved in the fire. So that was what was causing up a lot of the bigger, darker smoke, and then the wind was carrying those embers past and downhill, and that's what caught the vegetation on fire. So that's where you get about an acre and a half of vegetation. So we have a lot of heavy equipment, as you heard it getting offloaded right now, that are trying to dig in through those piles, get in there and try and separate it so we can get water on it and put the fire out. The winds have calmed down a bit. You can see the smoke starting to swirl around a bit, but it's a lot different than it was when we first got here. The other part of the problem, what we had with two separate incidents, basically. We had the incident within the incident. We had the vegetation fire, which we had resources handling, and then we had all this mulch and debris and somewhat hazardous materials that we were dealing with. The other thing we used our Firehawk helicopter that came in and did numerous water drops, trying to take away a lot of that heat. It was dropping 1,000 gallons at a time and was battling the breeze in doing so, and it did a great job of knocking down a lot of that heat. But as you can still see over the shoulder, you can still see that there's a lot of active fire, and we're going to be here all night into tomorrow trying to pull apart those piles, getting that fire dead out.
What is the containment like right now?
There's zero containment right now. We're not going to say in a containment level at this part. We've got one pile out, but we've got another one. So it's a little bit of a whack-a-mole right now at this point. But we feel really good about the vegetation fire on the downhill side. It hasn't grown. We've got a line around it, and we're starting to work real hard, heavy with that. So our main focus right now is taking care of all these different piles that are on fire. Like I said, we got the heavy equipment that's going to start scooping through. We had some front-end loaders, and we got an earth mover over here, an excavator that's going to start digging through those piles. So that's where we stand right now.
And how many acres have burned?
Total 2. We got about a half an acre of the mulch and the debris, and then about an acre and a half of the vegetation on the downhill side.
Gene, can you record this?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
And what crews? I know you mentioned the helicopters out here. What crews are out here working right now?
We have about 70 personnel on scene. We have our.
One more time.
That's okay. That's okay.
All right, camera is we're recording.
Okay, what crews do you have here working right now?
We have about 70 personnel on scene right now. We have our hand crews, we have our heavy equipment, we had our helicopter that was working earlier, but now is just on call. We have a lot of engine companies, as well as from the Forest Service and Santa Barbara County that's working this incident.
And how has the wind been affecting you
Well,
guys
as you
right
can
now?
tell, it's just started picking up again. A few moments ago, it was relatively calm, and now it's kind of starting to eddy around. You can see the smoke starting to swirl as that down canyon wind is starting to pick up again, which could be problematic as it could carry embers outside the containment line.
And what else can you show us out here?
Well, we can take a look around. If we walk around, you can see, just be careful of your step, you can see some of these large piles. We have a couple roll-off drums that had some of the material inside that's on fire, and then we have some of these larger mulch piles that are on fire behind it. As you can see, they're about 10 feet tall, and they run about 40 yards back, and then you can see it kind of ebbs and flows, the troughs and the crests of the debris. So those where we're going to have to get in, get that heavy equipment in there, start pulling it apart, trying to get the water on it. And as you can look, if you look down over my shoulder, you'll see in the distance, you'll see a couple hand lines on there. They're trying to wet those larger piles down and soak them to try and get those embers out.
And the fire started in one of these mulch piles?
It started with some of this heavy equipment over on this side. That's what the investigators are believing. That's where we feel comfortable, where we believe that this fire originated. And then, again, the first calls came down around 6:20 this evening.
Okay, and what was the scene like when crews arrived at 6:20?
Well, there was some confusion because we wasn't sure if it was a vegetation fire or if it was a mulch fire, and as it turned out, it ended up being both. Equipment, they thought it was about 1/4 of an acre at a time with a rapid rate of spread, because what they were seeing was they were approaching from the highway. They saw the vegetation down below that was catching and starting to make a run. So that's where the larger area that caught fire, the 1.5 acres, that's where that is. This is up here is only about 1/2 an acre, but it's a densely packed 1/2 acre with all the debris, all the mulch, all the recyclables that was on fire.
And is there anything else that the community should know about this fire?
It doesn't really impact the community that much. The smoke is laid down. There was some smoke that was crossing the 101 earlier, and it did impede some drivers. The CHP did a great job of slowing traffic down, so we didn't want anybody to get in an accident. We still had equipment had to cross the northbound lanes to get in here. So I just drove up from the freeway again. That's not being much of a problem with the smoke, so that's good. The wind has shifted a bit, but that could change, and so we want to make sure people if they're transit in the area, that they use caution. You can see it from the freeway, and we just want people to be careful.
And how long can we expect there to be smoke?
Well, smoke, there's going to be as much smoke as there's going to be fire, and that's going to be the problem, because we really don't know yet how long this is going to take to put it out, because we have so many piles that are involved. We got that equipment that's going to start pulling that stuff, and when it pulls, might send, if the winds aren't cooperating with us, it may send some embers up into the air, and that could carry outside the containment lines down canyon into that brush that hasn't been burned yet.
Okay, and anything else that the community should know?
No, and this is a different kind of a circumstance of a fire. The fire started on an industrial area, and it spread to the vegetation. It's not yet, we want to say it was a vegetation fire, but as you saw what's happening down in Orange County, fire season's year-round now. So if you live in that urban wildland interface, please be prepared for the next wildland fire that might affect your area. If there were homes down below, this would be a completely different story, but we're very fortunate that there wasn't. If it was, we would be concerned about those homeowners. So if you live in a fire-prone area, make sure that you have a defensible space up to 100 feet around. We're going to start doing inspections come June 1st. We want to make sure that you're safe and that you give these fire crews a chance to defend your home. They're going to pull up to your house, and they're going to make sure that they have a fighting chance to defend that home. If your house is overgrown, if you've got wood shake shingle roofs, they're not going to sacrifice themselves or their crew to try and defend a home that's not defendable. So they want to help us out and make sure that we have a house that we can try to defend.
Are any structures threatened right now here?
There's no structures. There's some infrastructure here that did have some damage due to the fire. Most of that was because of the contents that were in it. Most of it's all concrete buildings, so it's nothing really going to happen to it. But some of the other buildings, there was a roll-off, as you can see, that's damaged with fire. Another piece of machinery that did have some fire damage, and that one large concrete structure did have some damage with the mechanical. So that's going to be more the mechanics inside versus the structure itself.
And with all this equipment out here, have you guys had to take a different approach to putting out this fire? Have there been any dangers because of the equipment?
Well, it's just dangerous because anytime you have very large equipment, it makes a lot of